Picture yourself standing at the brink of a world untouched by time. Before you, an endless plain of ice stretches to the horizon, broken only by the jagged peaks of mountains older than memory. The wind cuts across your face, not merely cold but ancient, as if carrying voices from a world that predates your own. This is Antarctica, the loneliest, coldest, highest, and driest continent on Earth. But those labels, though dramatic, barely scratch the surface of its mystery. Antarctica is not just a desert of snow. It is a sealed chamber, a continent-sized puzzle box locked in white, whose secrets have outlived empires, and whose silence resists even the deepest scientific intrusions. Twice the size of Australia, larger than Europe, and yet it remains almost entirely hidden. Beneath its icy veneer, more than a mile thick in places, lies a land that once teemed with life. Forests once rustled here. Rivers flowed. Now it is a frozen tomb, but not an empty one. What lies entombed in that ice is what makes Antarctica so different from anywhere else on Earth. There are maps, centuries old, that depict a version of this land without ice, with coastlines drawn in impossible detail long before modern cartography. There are rumours of structures buried deep within the ice, angular forms seen in satellite images, too symmetrical to be natural. And then there are whispers of sightings, of forbidden access, of operations cloaked in military secrecy, of presences in the snow, too large to be men and too quiet to be machines. For much of human history, this place existed not in maps, but in myths. The Terra Australis Incognita, a southern land imagined by the ancients to balance the weight of the northern continents. Some described it as a place of great wealth and strange beasts. Others feared it, believed it to be cursed, unfit for man to tread. Centuries passed, and as ships circled the globe, Antarctica remained elusive. Unlike the North Pole, surrounded by nations, this southern pole was an island unto itself, encased in ice, protected by furious winds and violent seas. Even now, when satellites scan every corner of the globe, Antarctica remains an enigma. Why? That question, why so much about this place remains off-limits, echoes through every story you'll hear tonight. Why, in an age of global exploration and instant information, does this place resist understanding? Why does it remain cordoned off, legally and physically, from most of humanity? The ice doesn't only preserve, it hides. Radar scans and thermal imagery have revealed the outlines of shapes buried deep below, in places where humans have never walked. Mountains that look like pyramids, valleys that appear engineered, patterns in the snow that suggest movement, large-scale displacement of objects or beings. These aren't the conjectures of fiction writers. These are real images, triggering real questions. Tonight, I'm Mr. H, your guide through this frozen maze where myth, science, and speculation converge. We'll explore the stories that swirl beneath the snowdrifts, from accounts of ancient civilizations and impossible maps to the chilling experiences of explorers who swore something was watching them from the whiteness. We'll venture into the hidden history of Antarctica, not just as a scientific frontier, but as a forbidden zone, a place perhaps protected not for its fragility, but for the knowledge it conceals. We'll ask, what if the ice is more than a natural formation? What if it is a barrier, constructed, maintained, preserved, for a reason? We begin not with a theory, but with an image. A mountain discovered in 2016, captured from space, rising in the heart of the Ellsworth Range. Its shape, a near-perfect pyramid. Its faces sharp and angled. Its summit, an apex of startling symmetry. To the naked eye, it could be mistaken for a monument. It doesn't look carved by wind. It doesn't seem sculpted by chance. So, what is it? Some say it's just a geological quirk, a nunatak, the tip of a mountain peeking through the ice, shaped by eons of freeze and thaw. And yet, others argue it is something more, something placed, not formed, a structure from a time when this continent was warm, alive, and perhaps inhabited. Let's descend into this mystery, one layer of ice at a time. The pyramid is just the first fragment. What lies beneath could change how we understand our past, and who may have walked this earth before us. Close your eyes and imagine flying over the white abyss. The air is thinner here. The cold isn't just around you, it is in you. As you soar over the Ellsworth Mountains, something below catches your breath. A shape, a silhouette. 4 triangular faces, aligned with startling precision. Snow dusts its surface like powdered sugar over stone. This is the formation that started a storm of speculation. And tonight, it is our gateway into the unknown. Was it carved by nature, or built by hands now lost to time? The journey begins. The winds over the Ellsworth Mountains rarely rest. They scream across the snowfields, carving the ice like chisels, as if trying to erase whatever dares protrude from the white. And yet, amidst this fury, one structure remains unmoved, unshaken by time, weather, or skepticism. Rising sharply from the plateau, it doesn't merely resemble a pyramid. It commands the same eerie reverence that the pyramids of Egypt do. But this one stands in the loneliest place on Earth. Its discovery was not announced by archaeologists or explorers on the ground, but by satellite imagery, quietly, almost accidentally. In 2016, an aerial scan of the western Antarctic range revealed something strange. A peak whose geometry didn't resemble the jagged chaos of nearby cliffs or ridges. Instead, it formed a 4-sided figure, each face sloping upward to a central point. The kind of shape that, on any other continent, would demand immediate investigation. But here in the icy exile of the South, it sparked only questions. At first, scientists were quick to categorize it. A nunatak, they said. A peak poking through the ice, weathered by time. Over millennia, cycles of thawing and freezing can fracture even the strongest stone. The result? Angles, ridges, symmetry. Features that might mimic design but are born of chaos. And yet. Geologists noted that most nunataks do not look like this. Few possess the defined symmetry of 4 triangular faces. Fewer still align so neatly with cardinal directions. This structure, unlike others nearby, seemed not just naturally formed, but intentionally arranged. Like something designed to be seen. Like a marker left for those with the eyes, and the tools to find it. When viewed from above, its lines are too precise, too deliberate. The angles, the height, even the way it casts its shadow, all suggest more than mere geology. Even nature in its wildest experiments rarely repeats itself with such architectural elegance. This has led many to ask, what if this is not a peak? What if it's the tip of something much larger, something buried beneath thousands of feet of ice? Some theorists propose that the visible pyramid is only the apex of a massive structure submerged in the ice sheet. They point to similar formations scattered throughout the region, less defined, half buried, yet aligned with similar precision. Could these be a network? A series of pyramids, like those of the Giza Plateau, designed to work together, perhaps astronomically or even functionally? The Giza pyramids, after all, were not built randomly. They align with Orion's belt, with cardinal points, and with other monuments in ways that still confound scholars. Could similar principles apply here, on a continent where no civilization is supposed to have ever lived? This idea of a hidden architecture beneath the Antarctic ice would be laughable if not for the patterns seen in satellite data. Grid-like shadows, strange rectangular imprints beneath the snow, and linear ridges resembling ancient causeways have all appeared in recent scans of the region. But perhaps the most intriguing connection isn't modern at all. It's ancient. A single artifact from the 16th century, a map. In 1513, Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis compiled a world map using sources he claimed were hundreds, possibly thousands, of years old. The fragment that survives depicts the western coasts of Europe, Africa, and South America with uncanny precision. But it also shows something else, something that shouldn't be there. At the bottom of the map, a southern landmass curves like a crescent. It matches the shape of Antarctica's true coastline, beneath the ice. This depiction is baffling. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820. Its icy borders have never resembled those shown on the map. Yet the Piri Reis chart seems to portray a continent as it might have, appeared millions of years ago, before it froze. The accuracy of the coastline has led some to suggest that the map could only have been compiled using knowledge from an earlier, advanced civilization. A society capable of seafaring, surveying, and mapping with tools that wouldn't exist again until the modern era. This isn't mere fantasy. In the 1960s, historian Charles Hapgood proposed a radical theory. that ancient peoples possess sophisticated geographical knowledge passed down through generations of lost charts. He believed the Piri Reis map was a remnant of this forgotten world, a world that might have seen Antarctica in a time when it was warm, forested, and habitable. If such a civilization existed, could it have left something behind? Returning to the pyramid, one must consider, if we accept even the possibility of an ice-free Antarctica in the distant past, then structures like this take on a new meaning. They are no longer anomalies, they are evidence. The location of the pyramid, deep within the Ellsworth Range, only adds to the intrigue. This area has long been among the most inaccessible in Antarctica. No major settlements, no regular scientific bases. Even now it is visited only by drone and plane. A handful of expeditions have ventured near, but never within range of detailed ground exploration. This absence of human contact has preserved the mystery. No one's dug beneath it. No one's mapped it on foot. It remains for now a ghostly silhouette, its true nature hidden beneath layers of snow and bureaucratic barriers, and the barriers are many. Antarctica is governed by international treaties that restrict access to large portions of the continent. Officially, this is to protect the fragile environment. But some researchers and theorists argue it also serves to prevent deeper inquiry. Access to certain zones, especially those with unusual topographical features, is tightly controlled. Flights are banned over some areas, satellite imagery is delayed or censored. Exploration proposals are denied without explanation. If this were merely a mountain, why the secrecy? Those who believe the pyramid is a relic, not a peak, suggest it could be a monument left by an ancient race, or a civilization displaced by catastrophe. A time before the last great ice age when the poles were lush, green, and full of life. Could the structure have served a ceremonial purpose, a marker aligned with celestial events? Or was it functional, an observatory, a temple, or even a machine? The symmetry, the positioning, the geometry, all raise questions that geology cannot easily answer. And so, while scientists point to freeze-thaw weathering and erosion as the cause, others are not so sure. Nature carves, yes, but does it align? Does it measure? Does it orient structures to the stars? Perhaps. Or perhaps someone, or something, once stood where we now stand. They built, they watched, and when the snow came, they vanished beneath it, leaving behind only whispers in the stone. In 2023, enhanced satellite imaging uncovered even more anomalies in the Ellsworth region. Not just one pyramid, but 3. Their placement resembled a familiar pattern. The Orion constellation again. The same layout seen in Egypt, in Mexico, and possibly now in Antarctica. Coincidence? Perhaps. But in a continent where coincidence seems to rule, some wonder if there is in fact a deeper design. So we are left with a mystery. A structure shaped like a pyramid, in the middle of nowhere, aligned with precision, and sharing uncanny similarities to monuments found across the ancient world. Is it merely a trick of ice and wind? Or is it a clue? A message from a forgotten epoch, meant to last beyond war, beyond memory, even beyond the ice itself? As the sun dips below the horizon, and the wind rises once again, we pull away from the shadow of the pyramid, still unanswered, still watching. And we turn our gaze to an expedition cloaked in shadow, one that sought to penetrate Antarctica's secrets and left behind only more questions. Next, we'll follow the footsteps of Admiral Richard E. Byrd and the mysterious Operation High Jump, a mission cloaked in military power yet shrouded in mystery. What did they find? And why did they leave so suddenly? The snow is beginning to whisper again. Listen closely. The silence speaks. In the stillness of Antarctica's eternal white, where storms whisper like secrets, and time seems frozen alongside the ice, a fleet once sailed south, not for science, but for something else. Something that even now remains unresolved. In the winter of 1946, just months after the bloodiest conflict in human history, the United States launched the largest military expedition ever assembled to the polar regions. Its name was innocent enough, Operation High Jump. But behind that name lay a shadow. Officially, it was a mission to train personnel and test military equipment in extreme cold. But from the moment the ship set sail, 13 vessels, 4,700 men, and dozens of aircraft, questions began to gather like ice in the hull. Why, in a time of post-war exhaustion, Would a country mobilise such a force for a place so far from any battlefield? What urgency drove this operation to the very bottom of the earth? The answers, we're told, are simple: training, mapping, research. And yet the scale of the deployment suggests something more than drills or cartography. Some believe Operation High Jump was not just an expedition, it was a reconnaissance, or a search, or perhaps even an encounter. At the centre of this story stands Rear Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd, a towering figure in the history of polar exploration. A decorated aviator and a national hero, Byrd had already flown over both poles and survived brutal Antarctic conditions on prior expeditions. But this mission, this military-led voyage, was different. And according to those who've studied his words carefully, Byrd may have returned with more than just frostbite. High Jump launched in December 1946, arriving at the Ross Ice Shelf weeks later. 3 task forces fanned out across the continent's perimeter, east, central and west, each tasked with aerial surveys, reconnaissance, and establishing a temporary base called Little America 4. Over the course of several months, aircraft conducted over 220 flights, photographing more than 1.5 million square miles of territory. Some of the images revealed strange terrain, snowless valleys, sudden fissures in the ice, and even mountain peaks resembling pyramids. But then, something changed. In late February 1947, just weeks into what was supposed to be a 6-month operation, the mission ended abruptly. The ships departed, the planes returned to their carriers, and Byrd stopped talking. Officially, the operation was curtailed due to poor weather, equipment failure, and logistical challenges. But unofficially, rumours began to spread. That aircraft were lost in strange circumstances, that unidentified objects had been sighted moving across the ice, fast, silent, and beyond known technology. That Byrd himself had experienced something that changed the course of his final years. Among these whispers emerged a document, not published, not confirmed, but persistent. It is known as Admiral Byrd's Secret Diary. In it, Byrd reportedly recounts an encounter during one of his reconnaissance flights. He describes flying deep into the Antarctic interior when the instruments on his plane began to fail. Compasses spun wildly, radios crackled and fell silent, the sky changed colour, and then, according to this document, his plane was seized by forces beyond his control. What follows reads less like a journal and more like a vision. Byrd claims to have been escorted, not by military forces but by flying craft, into a hidden valley surrounded by green. Not white, not ice. Green. A temperate oasis in the middle of a frozen continent. There, he describes a meeting with beings of immense intelligence. Tall, radiant, quiet. They communicated telepathically. They showed him a city unlike any on Earth. Gleaming towers, clean air, technology that did not pollute or decay. They warned him of humanity's trajectory, of war, of weapons too powerful to control, of a world in danger of consuming itself. And then they let him go. Admiral Byrd allegedly returned to base, shaken and quiet. In this supposed diary, he writes of being sworn to silence by government officials, that what he saw must be hidden, not from the enemies of the state, but from its citizens. The authenticity of this diary has never been proven. Most mainstream historians consider it a hoax, a fabrication cobbled together by conspiracy theorists long after Byrd's death. But the fact remains, Byrd changed. In public interviews, including one given in Chile after Operation High Jump, he made curious comments, remarks about the polar regions becoming future arenas for conflict, hints that dangers could come from over the poles. To some, it was just Cold War posturing. To others, it was a warning. And if Byrd truly encountered something beyond our understanding, perhaps Operation High Jump was not just exploratory, but a confrontation, a test, or an unintended breach into something ancient and hidden. These ideas gain traction when placed alongside a darker thread, the question of what the Nazis left behind. In 1938, just before World War II erupted, Nazi Germany sent an expedition to Antarctica. Its purpose, officially, was whaling, a search for fat and oil. But the mission, led by the vessel MS Schwabenland, did more than map the ice. It dropped swastika-stamped darts along the coast. It claimed territory. It photographed hundreds of thousands of square kilometres, and then it vanished from the record. After the war, German submarines began to surface unexpectedly in South America. U-530 and U-977 both arrived months after the Nazi surrender. Their commanders gave no clear account of where they'd been or why. Some speculated they had journeyed south, delivering personnel, cargo, or even technology to a hidden base in Antarctica. A myth was born, one that would persist, that perhaps deep beneath the ice, Germany had built a refuge, a final stronghold, or worse, a research station where experiments continued long after the Reich had fallen. Some versions of the story suggest the Nazis uncovered something in Antarctica, something older, that they stumbled upon ruins or technology or beings not of this world, and that their interest in the occult, the esoteric and the stars was not merely symbolic, it was strategic. Could Operation High Jump, then, have been a reconnaissance mission not to map, but to investigate, not to explore, but to eliminate? Was the fleet prepared for combat? The answer may lie in the strange circumstances of the mission's conclusion. Several aircraft were damaged or lost. One, the Martin PBM Mariner George 1, exploded during takeoff, killing 3 men. The official cause was mechanical failure, but survivor accounts spoke of electrical anomalies, of magnetic interference, of pressure systems fluctuating without warning. There are even tales, whispered, not published, of pilots seeing strange craft darting across the horizon. Metallic, silent, fast, like nothing they'd seen in the war. Some believe these encounters were with remnants of German engineering, the supposed Die Glock, or bell-shaped craft rumoured to bend gravity. Others argue they were something far older, not Nazi, not human. Byrd never spoke publicly about these claims. He died in 1957, just a decade after High Jump. Whatever he saw or didn't see was buried with him. But the myths persisted, and they became louder when, in 1959, just 2 years after Byrd's death, 12 nations signed the Antarctic Treaty, an agreement that would ban military activity, limit exploration, and lock Antarctica in a cage of legal ice. Why? Why protect this place so completely? Why limit access to such a staggering degree? Why seal a continent so few had ever seen? Some believe Operation High Jump forced the world to confront something too dangerous to expose, a technology, a truth, a presence. Others believe it was merely a Cold War chess move, one made with more ice than blood, a way to avoid a new front in an already complicated world. But the evidence, the fragments, the strange comments, the lost time, all remain. In the silence of Antarctica, they echo louder than gunfire. And so, we're left with a question. What really happened during those months beneath the southern sun? What did Admiral Byrd see, or think he saw? Why was the mission cut short, the findings buried, and the continent cordoned off? As we turn from the windswept memories of Operation High Jump, we move deeper into Antarctica's enigma, toward a crimson river that flows where nothing should flow. Blood falls, a wound in the ice, a mystery in motion. Is it natural, or is it a sign? Next, we follow the red stream through one of Earth's most surreal landscapes, the dry valleys, where Antarctica bleeds. Imagine wandering across a valley so silent, so desolate, it seems the world has stopped breathing. No snow falls here, no animals stir, just parched rock, loose grit, and a glacier that doesn't creep. It waits. Then, from its icy wall, a crimson stream begins to bleed. Not a trickle, a vivid stain of deep rust, as if the ice itself is wounded. This is Blood Falls, a name that conjures the supernatural, a place that looks like it belongs on Mars, and yet it flows from the very heart of Antarctica, in one of the driest, most lifeless regions on Earth, the McMurdo Dry Valleys. Blood Falls pours from the front of the Taylor Glacier, 5 stories high, a steady stream of red fluid that stains the white like an open artery. At first glance, it defies everything we understand about the frozen South. Here, where water should be locked in place, something moves, something bleeds. When first discovered in 1911 by members of Robert Falcon Scott's expedition, the reaction was as primal as it was scientific. The red hue startled the explorers. There were whispers, some joking, others not, of iron, of sacrifice, of strange things hidden in the ice. Over the decades, scientists offered more grounded explanations. The colour, they said, came from iron-rich brine. A pocket of salt water, buried under hundreds of metres of ice, had been sealed for millions of years. As the glacier moved and cracked, this brine began to seep out, and when it met the air, the iron oxidised, turning red, like rust in a wound. A rational answer. But the mystery only deepened. In 2003, microbiologists investigating the brine beneath Bloodfalls made a startling discovery. It wasn't dead. It was alive. They found microorganisms thriving in total darkness, without oxygen, feeding on iron and sulfur in a closed-loop ecosystem that hadn't seen sunlight in over 1 million years. Life, where life should not exist. These microbes are extremophils, organisms adapted to survive in conditions that would kill nearly anything else. Freezing cold, high salinity, crushing pressure, zero light. Yet here they are, in a liquid trapped beneath a glacier, surviving in isolation longer than the rise of human civilization. How did they get here? How long have they been evolving, sealed off from the rest of the biosphere? No one knows. And that uncertainty turns Bloodfalls from a curiosity into something more. A key. A glimpse into life's stubbornness. Its ability to cling to the edges of existence. But also a potential sign of something else. That beneath Antarctica's ice, entire worlds may be hidden. Not metaphorical worlds, literal ones. Lakes, rivers, even mountain valleys, encased in ice and untouched for eons. And if Bloodfalls can flow, what else might? Beneath the Taylor Glacier lies a subglacial lake, an ancient body of water thought to be 400 metres below the surface. This lake connects to a network of underground waterways, forming a vast labyrinth of liquid movement beneath the ice cap. Researchers have named dozens of these buried lakes, Lake Vostok, Lake Mercer, Lake Wilkes, each its own isolated ecosystem. In recent years, scientists have drilled into a few of them. What they've found is astonishing. Not just life, but complexity. In Lake Wilkes, microbes were discovered metabolizing iron and nitrogen, despite total darkness and freezing temperatures. In Lake Mercer, researchers found microbial mats, bacterial colonies layered like a living rug. And in 2020, scanning techniques revealed strange structures on the floor of another subglacial lake, formations that resembled branching tree-like patterns or mineralized carpets. Life here isn't just surviving, it's evolving. Which leads to a deeper, unsettling question. If these lakes can harbour life for millions of years in isolation, could they harbour something more? Not necessarily monstrous or intelligent, but alien. Not from space, but from Earth. A life so different from ours, so ancient and self-contained, that encountering it would feel like meeting something from another planet. And what if? Someone already has. That's where the stories begin. Among the researchers stationed in the dry valleys, reports have emerged, quietly, often dismissed, of strange phenomena. Footsteps echoing in the rock when no one is nearby, equipment shifting on its own, whispers caught on windless nights. The rational mind says, stress, isolation, sensory trickery. These valleys are as mentally punishing as they are physically. But for those who've spent months here, the presence they describe isn't imagined. It's felt. Like being watched by something old and indifferent. Like the land itself is aware. Bloodfalls in this context becomes more than a chemical oddity. It becomes a symbol, a marker, a boundary between what we understand and what we don't. Some theorists have speculated that the subglacial ecosystem beneath Bloodfalls is more than biological. It may be artificial. They ask whether the brine is seeping from a natural reservoir or from something constructed. A vent, a relic, a chamber from a time when Antarctica was warm and inhabited. Could there be structures beneath the glacier, now buried, now leaking? Supporting these ideas are data points. In the 1970s, anomalous isotopes were detected in soil samples taken near the valleys. No conclusive source was identified. In 2022, satellite scans of the region picked up subtle rectangular patterns in the ice around the Taylor Glacier. Again, no one claimed they were buildings, but the lines were there, clean, geometric, unnatural. Skeptics insist the patterns are just the result of melting and refreezing, and that's possible. But the image persists. Blood falls as a wound not just in the glacier, but in the facade of certainty. It begs questions. Could this flow be the surface symptom of something deeper? Could the microbes in the water be remnants of a designed ecosystem, or perhaps early ancestors of life seeded in Antarctica long before recorded time? In fringe circles, the theories spiral outward. Some link the falls to Agartha, the mythical subterranean city described in ancient lore as a haven of advanced beings beneath the earth. Others suggest the falls are a failsafe, leaking a pressurized reservoir to prevent explosion, a pressure valve on something ancient, dormant, waiting. Most scientists scoff at these ideas, and rightly so. The iron-rich brine, the extremophile microbes, they're fascinating enough without reaching for myth. But even the researchers admit this. Blood Falls is only the visible tip of an invisible system. What lies beneath, no one has seen. Because drilling into these glacial systems is difficult, dangerous, and heavily regulated. When Russian teams breached Lake Vostok in 2012, the lake water erupted upward, mixing with drilling fluid and contaminating samples. It was a reminder, even with modern tools, we're not in control down here. The ice answers to no one, and yet we keep returning. Because beneath Antarctica's ice, we glimpse the possibility of the unimagined. Blood Falls is not the only place where liquid flows beneath the cold. There are hundreds of lakes down there, rivers, caves, and if the past is any clue, this continent has not always been frozen. At one point, 100 million years ago, Antarctica was lush and green. Trees towered where glaciers now loom. Dinosaurs roamed through forests fed by sunlight. Later, as the Earth cooled, life retreated. But did it vanish? Or did it adapt? The microbes beneath Blood Falls are the answer to that question. Life doesn't surrender. It survives. It transforms. And sometimes, it hides. So we stand before this bleeding glacier, no longer asking what causes the colour. We know that. The better question now is, why is it flowing at all, and where does it lead? As we leave the dry valleys behind, our path turns beneath the ice, to the lakes that slumber in silence, to the rivers that carry life where no light has ever reached. Next, we explore the hidden waterways of Antarctica, the secret ocean beneath the continent, and ask, what creatures, what cultures, what truths might drift in the deep? Beneath your feet lies silence, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of pressure, of cold, of time packed into layers, mile after mile frozen in place. Antarctica may appear static from above, a white desert with nothing beneath but stone and frost, but this is a deception. Under the ice lies motion, life, complexity, and perhaps something more. Scattered across the continent, hidden beneath over a mile of solid ice, is a network of more than 400 known subglacial lakes, isolated, pressurized, completely cut off from the surface world. Some have not seen light in over 15 million years. Others may never have seen it at all. They are dark oceans beneath a frozen sky, connected by rivers no one has ever navigated, valleys no one has ever walked, and chambers no human has ever seen. It is a world within a world, silent, immense, and haunting. The best known of these is Lake Vostok, located beneath Russia's Vostok Station in East Antarctica. Roughly the size of Lake Ontario, it stretches 250 kilometers in length and reaches depths of up to 1,000 meters, and yet, until 1996, no one even knew it was there. Its discovery came through radar imaging, waves sent through the ice that bounced back with strange clarity. Beneath the surface, something reflected those signals not like bedrock, but like water. A lake, sealed under 4 kilometers of ice, still liquid, kept warm by geothermal heat and the crushing pressure above. It was, and remains, a scientific miracle, an untouched biosphere that could predate the last ice age, and possibly much more. Drilling into Lake Vostok took decades. Efforts to avoid contamination slowed the process. When the team finally breached the lake in 2012, the results were inconclusive. Water surged upward, mixing with antifreeze and drilling fluids. The samples were tainted, and yet, early tests detected something unusual. Traces of microbial DNA that did not match any known species. It wasn't proof, but it was a beginning. Since then, smaller lakes have been explored. Lake Wilkes, accessed in 2013, revealed a living system teeming with microbial life. Lake Mercer, reached in 2018, held similar surprises: bacteria feeding on rock, iron, and ancient minerals. These weren't isolated survivors. They were entire ecosystems, self-contained, self-sustaining, and completely alien to the surface biosphere. And in 2020, radar revealed a new lake near the Gamburtsev subglacial mountains, a body of water now dubbed Lake Enigma. The name is appropriate. Preliminary scans revealed something strange: structures on the lake bed, not buildings, not machines, but formations, layered patterns, textures that resembled microbial mats, complex colonies of bacteria arranged in shapes unfamiliar to surface biology. Some formed spirals, others took the form of branching dendrites, tree-like structures that suggested cooperation, or perhaps even predation. Whatever they are not simple. Researchers hesitate to speculate, but a few, quietly, off-record, have noted similarities to the fossilized microbial structures found in stromatolites, some of the oldest evidence of life on Earth. Others have hinted at possibilities even further afield, that life in these lakes may not resemble Earth's past but something entirely new. And that raises the question, if we have barely scratched the surface of this hidden biosphere, what might lie deeper? Antarctica's subglacial network is not static. It's dynamic. Rivers move through it, feeding and draining lakes like breath through lungs. Some of these channels are massive, subsurface streams that rival the Amazon in length and complexity, moving beneath the ice in total darkness. In 2019, satellite data revealed fluctuations in the water level of Lake Mercer, suggesting that vast amounts of liquid move through the underground network in cycles. These movements could reshape the under-ice landscape over time, exposing previously sealed environments or burying others forever. One implication is chilling. There could be chambers beneath Antarctica's ice that no longer connect to the lakes we've found. Fossil environments, ancient tombs of microbial life, or something else, cut off for millions of years. Entire ecosystems lost to time, perfectly preserved, waiting. But waiting for what? That question lies at the heart of Antarctica's enigma, because with every new discovery, the lines blur between biology and geology, between science and myth. Some suggest that these lakes were not simply shaped by natural processes, but perhaps altered, engineered. There are theories, unproven, controversial, that the geometry of certain subglacial basins suggests more than erosion, that some lakes form perfect circles, that some patterns in the radar scans resemble symmetry too exact for chance. In 2023, thermal imaging near Lake Enigma revealed localized heat signatures, anomalies in the ice where geothermal activity alone cannot account for the energy. Some believe it may be hydrothermal vents, others wonder if it's something artificial, perhaps remnants of ancient technology, now dormant. And then there are the stories passed quietly among the few who have stood on this ice. One research team near the Wilkes ice stream in 2021 reported brief electromagnetic pulses, signals, they said, too structured to be static, a pattern, almost like code. The pulses were never repeated, no source was found, but those who heard them through the instruments described an overwhelming feeling of presence. Something down there, they said, something moving, something aware. This is where the boundaries fray, where science gives way to silence. Because despite our technology, our satellites, our drills, we still know so little about what lies below. Less than 10 of the 400 known subglacial lakes have been explored in detail. The rest remain untouched, silent, sealed. Theories abound. Some speak of these lakes as natural laboratories, places where life evolved in parallel, forming branches on the tree of life that we never knew existed. Others go further. They believe the lakes are remnants of a forgotten epoch, a time when Antarctica was not a wilderness, but a center, a cradle, a place where ancient civilizations, human or otherwise, once studied the world from beneath the ice. They point to patterns, to maps, to the precision of certain satellite images that show rectangular depressions, possible foundations, beneath the ice near Lake Vostok. Structures aligned in grid-like arrangements, the kind you don't see in nature. The mainstream dismisses these as digital noise, shadow artifacts, or geological coincidence. But in a land so rarely touched, coincidence becomes a weak defense, and some go further still. They suggest these lakes aren't just habitats, but vaults, storage facilities for ancient knowledge, or quarantine chambers for things we're not meant to find. A few even link the lakes to extraterrestrial visitors, pointing to the extremophile microbes as evidence of panspermia, life seeded from the stars. The truth, as always, lies somewhere beneath, buried in silence, awaiting tools that don't yet exist, or permissions that won't be granted. Because Antarctica's rules are strict. Drilling is slow, expensive, and tightly regulated. The Antarctic Treaty forbids most forms of deep exploration in sensitive zones. Even when samples are retrieved, analysis is delayed, and often results are vague. Whether this is caution or something more depends on who you ask. For now, the lakes remain sealed, and the network beneath the ice remains a map of questions. We leave them behind, drifting in the dark. But before we ascend back to the light, one final shadow waits in the water. Not a theory, not a pattern, a creature, or perhaps a presence. In the deep, cold sea that surrounds Antarctica, stories have emerged of something watching from below, something vast, humanoid, and white as snow. They call it the Ningen. And in the next chapter, we'll follow the sailors who say they've seen it. The waters that cradle Antarctica are not lifeless. They churn with violence, pull with unseen currents, and plunge into depths no human has ever reached. This is the Southern Ocean, a borderland of liquid cold that surrounds the continent like a moat. Storms lash its surface year-round. Icebergs the size of cities drift through it, and beneath its waves something watches, or so the stories go. For centuries the Southern Ocean has been the subject of maritime myth. Explorers who dared its roots reported oddities, shadows beneath the hull, sounds with no origin, strange fogs that swallowed ships. But among these tales, one creature has emerged in the modern age to unsettle even seasoned scientists. Its name is whispered in obscure forums, late-night radio shows, and documents never officially acknowledged. The Ningen. In Japanese, Ningen simply means human. But the being described by that word is anything but ordinary. The first sightings surfaced in the early 2000s from anonymous accounts tied to Japanese whaling crews operating near Antarctica. Descriptions varied, but one detail never changed. The size. Colossal. 30 meters long. Pale white. Humanoid in shape. A massive featureless face with empty black eyes. Limbs that moved with unsettling grace, and a body that melted into the water like mist when approached. Most sightings came at night or during twilight, always at the edge of perception, a vast shape breaking the surface, a glimpse of something pale and smooth, then silence, nothing but the wind and the lurch of the ship. Some describe the Ningen as having arms, elongated, waving, boneless like the appendages of a jellyfish. Others claim to see a tail like a whale. A few said it swam alongside vessels for hours, matching their speed without disturbing the waves. And then there were the faces. Crews reported seeing a face rise from the water, blank, lidless, massive, and stare. No aggression, no fear, just observation, as if curious, as if deciding something. No photographs ever confirm these sightings. Some blurry images circulate online, one from a Japanese government vessel, another from satellite scans, but none can be verified. They show shapes, yes, pale anomalies. But the Ningen, if it exists, remains elusive. Too fast, too deep, or too clever. Skeptics offer many explanations. Misidentified icebergs, giant squid seen in the dark, sleep-deprived sailors chasing shadows, and yet the stories persist. Because the Southern Ocean hides many things, things we know and things we suspect. Take, for example, the colossal squid, a real animal confirmed by science. It can grow up to 14 meters long, with eyes the size of dinner plates. It lives in the blackness of the deep ocean, almost never surfacing. Its arms bear rotating hooks, its skin emits bioluminescence. Until recently it was thought to be mythical, and it's not the only giant. Antarctica's waters are home to species that challenge our sense of scale. Sea spiders the size of dinner plates, glass sponges that live for thousands of years, fish with antifreeze in their blood, creatures adapted not just to survive the cold, but to vanish into it. So is it such a leap to imagine that something larger, stranger, and perhaps older could still be lurking in the deep? The Ningen isn't the only marine mystery here. Sailors have long reported massive serpentine shadows, tentacled shapes brushing against hulls, and sonar anomalies that defy classification. One 2008 report from a Japanese survey vessel described a sonar contact moving at over 80 knots, too fast for any known whale or submarine. It vanished before it could be tracked. And then there's Deception Island. Located in the South Shetland chain, Deception Island is a flooded volcanic caldera, home to strange geothermal activity. In 2016, satellite imagery captured what appeared to be a long, dark shadow beneath the water just off the island's coast, over 100 metres long, curved, tentacled, like something ancient shifting beneath the surface. Skeptics said it was a sea stack, a submerged rock, but others noted that the shadow appeared to have moved between image captures, that it had a wake. Some compared it to the Kraken, not as a monster, but as a metaphor, because what lies beneath these waters may not be interested in us. It may be older than our species, born in a world before memory, surviving in silence, beneath the shifting ice and black waves. Which brings us back to the Ningen. If it is real, what is it? Some theorists speculate it's a deep ocean cephalopod, evolved to mimic the shape of predators or even humans to deter threats. Others believe it could be a species of undiscovered whale or sirenian, mammals shaped by evolution in the absence of sunlight, their eyes blackened by the deep. And then there are stranger ideas. Some propose the Ningen is not a creature at all but an emissary. Biological, yes, but designed. By whom? That depends on the theory. Ancient civilizations, subterranean intelligences, even extraterrestrials, all seeking to monitor the surface world from the isolation of Antarctica's edge. The humanoid shape, the face, the arms, the eyes, it all feels intentional, like a mask or a mirror. There's also an esoteric theory that the Ningen is a biological echo, a product of Earth's memory, a form shaped by consciousness itself, born not of evolution, but of belief, a psychic projection given form by the collective fear of the deep unknown. These ideas, of course, lie beyond science, but they persist because Antarctica invites them, because the Southern Ocean is less studied than the surface of Mars, because the creatures that do exist here are stranger than any fiction, and because the silence itself seems to hide more than cold. But whether the Ningen is real or imagined, it taps into something primal, the terror of the deep, the idea that beneath the waves something watches, not with malice, not with hunger, but with patience, waiting. Perhaps it's no coincidence that the earliest accounts of the Ningen came after Operation High Jump, or that sightings spiked again in the late 2000s, just as satellite mapping began revealing anomalies beneath the ice. Some believe there is a connection, that the creature is not alone, that others like it, different shapes, different depths, move in the blackness beyond our reach, and that the Southern Ocean, more than any jungle or mountain or desert, remains Earth's last true frontier. As we sail from these legends, one thought lingers. What if the Ningen is not a myth or a monster, but a warning? A reminder that the sea is not ours, that we are visitors, temporary, and that beneath Antarctica, the ancient world still stirs. Our next journey turns not to myth, but to maps, to one in particular, drawn in 1513, which shows Antarctica centuries before it was discovered, and not as a continent of ice, but as a land with rivers and coasts free of snow. It's called the Piri Reis map, and it shouldn't exist. In the age before satellites, before GPS, before the very idea of flying over the poles, maps were more than just guides. They were acts of faith. They charted the known, filled the unknown with dragons or sea serpents, and traced coastlines seen only through rumour. Most were inaccurate, imaginative, or unfinished. But then there was one that didn't just defy the errors of its time, it defied time itself. The Piri Reis map. Drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral and cartographer named Piri Reis, this map has become the centre of one of the most enduring mysteries of the modern age, not because of what it includes, but because of what it should not. On its surviving fragment we see familiar contours, the western coast of Africa, parts of Europe, even the eastern edge of South America. Reasonable considering the maritime knowledge of the 16th century. But at the southern edge of the map, curving like the tail of a question mark, lies a landmass that has no reason to be there, a vast southern continent, complete with rivers, mountains and bays, not buried in snow, not misshapen by ice, but outlined with extraordinary detail. Its coastline, when compared to modern surveys, closely matches the actual contours of Queen Maud Land, a region of East Antarctica currently hidden beneath over a mile of ice. This fact alone has puzzled historians, geographers, and skeptics for over a century, because Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, and its subglacial coastline, mapped only through radar and seismic scans, wasn't known until the late 20th century. So how then did a Turkish admiral in 1513 draw it? Piri Reis, in his own writings, never claimed the map was original. He openly stated that he compiled it using older sources, some from Arabic sailors, some from ancient charts he said were based on maps drawn in the time of Alexander the Great. Others may have originated even earlier, which raises a question. Were these sources relics of a forgotten civilization? In 1960, Professor Charles Hapgood reignited interest in the map with his book Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings. Hapgood suggested that the Piri Reis map and others like it were evidence of a highly advanced maritime culture that existed before recorded history, a culture capable of navigating the globe, charting coastlines with precision, and passing that knowledge down through generations of lost documents. Hapgood wasn't a fringe thinker. His theory received attention from serious circles, even attracting the endorsement of Albert Einstein. In a letter written shortly before his death, Einstein praised Hapgood's approach and acknowledged the possibility that Earth's history was far more complex than commonly understood. But if Hapgood was right, who were these sea kings, and why is Antarctica at the centre of their legacy? Let's consider the map again. The coastline it shows is not the one we see today, buried in ice, warped by glaciers. Instead, it resembles the ice-free Antarctic coast, one that may have existed over 6,000 years ago, during a period known as the Holocene climatic optimum, a time when parts of the continent may have been partially deglaciated. The implications are staggering. Either ancient civilizations mapped Antarctica thousands of years before it was officially discovered, or the source maps used by Piri Reis came from a time when Antarctica was not frozen. And both options challenge everything we know about human history. Hapgood's theory proposes that Earth's crust may have shifted catastrophically in the distant past, a concept known as crustal displacement. According to this idea, Antarctica was once located closer to the equator in a temperate zone, allowing a civilization to explore, map, or even inhabit it. A sudden geophysical event then shifted the continent southward, plunging it into ice and obscurity. Mainstream science has not accepted this theory. Plate tectonics, as we understand them, move far more slowly than Hapgood suggested. But again, we return to the map. How do we explain the accuracy? Some say it's coincidence, that the shape on the Piri Reis map is merely an embellished version of South America, distorted by lack of information. But overlays of the map onto modern topography show strong correlations, specific bays, inlets, and mountain ranges that line up with radar-mapped features beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet. Others point out additional anomalies. Piri Reis's map is not the only one. The Orontius Phineas map, created in 1531, also depicts Antarctica, ice-free, detailed, and complete with river systems and mountain ranges. The Mercator maps, compiled in the 16th century, include a southern continent labelled Terra Australis Incognita, not as a fantasy, but as a known land. Taken together, these charts form a pattern, not imagination, not myth, memory. A memory passed down through lost documents, maps copied from maps, sources now vanished into war, fire, and the erosion of time. It's not impossible. Consider this. The library of Alexandria, before its destruction, held tens of thousands of texts from all corners of the ancient world. Babylonian star charts, Egyptian sea logs, Phoenician navigation scrolls. If even a fragment of that knowledge survived, through Islamic scholars, Byzantine monks, or early explorers, it could have reached Piri Reis through forgotten hands. But what if it wasn't just knowledge that survived? What if the landmass depicted on the map wasn't just known, but occupied? This is where theory gives way to speculation, but not without cause. Archaeological evidence from around the world increasingly suggests the presence of complex societies far older than previously believed. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to 11,600 years ago, features megalithic structures arranged with astronomical precision. Underwater ruins off the coast of Japan, the Yonaguni Monument, resemble sunken cities. Stone alignments in the Amazon hint at lost civilizations beneath the jungle canopy. What if Antarctica too held such a civilization? The problem is access. Antarctica, since the 1959 Antarctic Treaty, has been locked under layers of scientific, political and logistical barriers. Exploration is allowed, but only in designated areas. Drilling is limited, independent expeditions face immense difficulty securing permits, and even then much of the interior remains a no-go zone. If there are ruins beneath the ice, no one has reached them, or perhaps no one has reported reaching them. Those who believe the Piri Reis map is more than an enigma suggest it may have been a leak, a fragment that escaped the fate of others, a glimpse into a world that once was, or one we were never meant to remember. Some go further still. They suggest the land mass on the map may not only have been inhabited, but may still be. That under the ice lies not just stone but heat, not just water but structure, evidence of habitation, sealed cities, ancient vaults, or even dormant machines. Too much? Perhaps. But the Piri Reis map remains, ink on aged leather, surviving empires and fires, whispering from the margins of history, and it says one thing clearly: Antarctica was known, and what is known was once seen. As we roll the map and step back from the drawing table, another document flickers into view. Not paper, not ink, but digital. Satellite images that have been blurred, redacted or pulled offline without explanation. Images that show not continents, but shapes, angles, geometry beneath the snow. Next we enter the age of the satellite, and ask, what are we not supposed to see? In the age of eyes in the sky, it is easy to forget how much remains unseen. Satellites orbit our planet in constellations, hundreds of them, scanning every corner of Earth, capturing images in extraordinary detail, farmlands, cityscapes, forest clearings, even the footprints of a single person across desert sand. They see everything, except sometimes they don't, because even in this era of relentless visibility, there are places where the lens falters, where resolution drops without cause, where clouds appear that do not move, where images vanish from archives or reappear, altered. And nowhere is this more common than Antarctica. A continent of secrets, it seems, extends even into orbit. Let's start with the satellites themselves. Google Earth, NASA Worldview, ESA Copernicus. These platforms pull data from overlapping sources: Landsat, Sentinel, Terra, Aqua, and more. Most of the time Antarctica appears as expected: icefields, glaciers, crevasses, and research stations. But occasionally users stumble upon something out of place. A rectangular shadow, a smooth geometric structure peeking through the snow, a long dark line that curves too sharply to be natural. Images circulate, screenshots are saved, coordinates are shared, and then, quietly, the image changes. A blur replaces the clarity. The resolution degrades. The structure vanishes beneath a white patch, just enough snow to obscure detail. No announcement, no explanation. The user refreshes the map. The anomaly is gone. This isn't paranoia. It's observable. Dozens of known coordinates in Antarctica have, at one time or another, displayed features that now no longer exist, at least not publicly. Among them, coordinates near the Shackleton Range where, in 2016, users reported what appeared to be a massive triangular structure emerging from the ice. 3 equilateral sides, sharp edges, a shadow consistent with artificial elevation. Today, that area appears as smooth snow, no triangle, a cluster of dark vertical formations near the Ellsworth Mountains, interpreted by some as ruined towers or buried antennae, now replaced with cloud cover, clouds that haven't moved in years. A large rectangular depression near the Queen Maud Land coast, perfectly aligned to the cardinal directions, once visible on Google Earth, now buried under a suspiciously uniform layer of snow with pixel artifacts, suggesting digital alteration. The skeptics argue these are glitches, data stitching errors, satellite anomalies, and many of them likely are, but not all. Because the blurring isn't random. It follows a pattern, one that aligns uncomfortably with the theories of forbidden access, hidden structures, and buried history. Consider this. Antarctica is the only continent with extensive censorship in satellite imaging. Certain areas are updated far less frequently. Others display terrain inconsistent with expected geologic behaviour, and still others are curiously low resolution, even though the satellites that image them are capable of stunning detail elsewhere. In 2017, a set of coordinates near Lake Vostok gained attention for showing a hexagonal depression. So precise in shape, it resembled the layout of an ancient city or platform. Within months, the image was altered. The depression softened, the geometry blurred. Of course, this might be a coincidence, ice shifts, satellite data updates. But again, the pattern holds. More troubling are the cases of scrubbed metadata. On multiple occasions, archived satellite images of Antarctica have been re-uploaded with modified timestamps, altered cloud patterns, or subtle shifts in terrain. To a casual viewer, nothing appears wrong. But to analysts who track these changes frame by frame, the manipulation is clear. And then there are the blackouts, entire tiles of data missing, white boxes, static, or regions where the terrain has been digitally replaced with a repeating texture, like a lazy patch of camouflage. In one notable case, a user tracking a snow-free ridge reported a visible rectangular hatch, like a door or portal embedded in the mountain face. When they returned a week later, the hatch was gone, replaced with a duplicate of the surrounding ice, but mirrored, a cut-and-paste job in the language of Photoshop. If this were North Korea or a secret military base, such edits would be expected. But this is Antarctica, a continent with no permanent population, governed by an international treaty that forbids territorial claims or military installations. So why the censorship? Some claim it's to protect sensitive scientific equipment. Others argue it's a quirk of satellite maintenance. But these explanations falter when we consider the uniformity of the geometry in the obscured areas. Because what's being hidden isn't random, it's architectural. Take the so-called Antarctica monolith. Discovered in satellite scans near the Waltat Massif, this structure appears as a tall, vertical object casting a long shadow. Its shape is rectangular, its surface is smooth, it stands alone. Initial theories suggested it was a rock spire or a volcanic extrusion, but its proportions, precisely 2:1, match those of known monuments and megaliths worldwide. Today, the monolith is no longer visible on public maps. Some claim to have captured its dimensions before the image was changed. Others believe the monolith is only the top of something far larger buried beneath, which brings us to the deeper possibility. That beneath the ice, a geometry persists. Radar scans from scientific expeditions, some leaked, some published, have shown unnatural angles in the bedrock, right angles, cross-hatchings, deep rectangular voids. One set of scans taken during an EU-funded ice-penetrating radar project in 2012 revealed parallel lines over 1 kilometre long, spaced exactly 100 metres apart, running beneath the Dronning Maudland region. The official explanation: glacial layering. But the symmetry is too precise, too regular, too human. Some theorists believe this geometry is evidence of a lost civilization, long buried beneath the ice, not primitive, but technological, capable of building in metal, stone, or materials no longer known. They see these satellite anomalies as architectural blueprints, the grid of a city, now entombed. Others suggest a non-human origin, structures left by visitors from elsewhere, not necessarily extraterrestrial in the way we imagine, but perhaps ultra-terrestrial, beings that coexisted with early humanity but have since retreated beneath the surface. And some go even further. They claim the satellite censorship is not just about hiding objects, but controlling the narrative, that governments and institutions, perhaps unknowingly, are protecting secrets older than civilization, that Antarctica is not just remote, but restricted, not just unexplored, but unexplainable. Of course, no agency confirms this, no government admits to editing satellite imagery, but the patterns speak, and what cannot be seen often hides the truth. As we drift away from the digital sky, the next layer of mystery lies not in images, but in silence, in the restrictions, in the red tape, in the question, why are we not allowed to look closer? The answer perhaps lies in the treaties, the enforcement, and the quiet cordoning off of knowledge. Next, we turn not to what we can see, but to what we're forbidden from seeing, the lockdown of Antarctica, and the quiet war for its silence. The world speaks often of freedom, the freedom to travel, to explore, to seek truth in the farthest reaches of the planet. But there is one place where that freedom ends, a place so vast, so remote, and so unclaimed that, paradoxically, it is more regulated than almost any other region on Earth: Antarctica. Here, in the most desolate corner of the world, the rules change. Here, you do not go where you wish. You do not explore on your own. You do not drill without permission, nor fly without escort, nor investigate anomalies without clearance. This is not because of danger. Not really. Danger exists everywhere, in jungles, deserts, oceans, but Antarctica is different. Here, the restriction is systemic, legal, quietly enforced by signatures inked decades ago and upheld without question. It begins with the Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959 by 12 countries, including the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Kingdom. It was, on the surface, a treaty of peace, a noble agreement to set aside Antarctica for science, cooperation, and environmental preservation. Military activity was banned, territorial claims were frozen, the continent became a neutral zone, and yet over time, this treaty became something else. It became a lock, a bureaucratic firewall that controls who may enter, where they may go, what they may see, and how they must report it. Today, more than 50 nations are bound by it, and their cooperation, unusual for geopolitics, is near total. To the casual observer, this appears ideal, a world united to protect a pristine land. But beneath the surface lies a different reality, because the moment you attempt to travel to Antarctica independently, you encounter resistance, permits, inspections, warnings, no-fly zones, shipping, restrictions. You're tracked, monitored, and if necessary, intercepted. Try to fly a private plane over the continent and you will be denied airspace. Try to sail to certain coordinates and you will be turned around. Try to drill deeper than a few meters and you'll be met with a wall of scientific ethics and international law. There is no off-the-grid in Antarctica, not anymore. And so we must ask, what is being protected? The official answer is simple: the environment. Antarctica is fragile, they say. The ice is melting, the wildlife is sensitive. Contamination could have global consequences. But let's examine that logic. The Amazon rainforest is fragile. So is the Arctic. So are coral reefs and desert biomes. Yet none are protected with the same legal firepower as Antarctica. None are shrouded in the same regulatory fog. Why? Why does the treaty prohibit not just military activity, but mineral exploration? Why are large sections of the continent marked as off-limits, even to scientists? Why are satellite images blurred, GPS data missing, and access to key zones practically impossible? Why is the penalty for unauthorized exploration so severe? Consider this. In 2018, a group of independent researchers attempted to reach a glacial region near the South Pole. They filed permits, they had funding, they followed protocol, but when they requested access to a specific site, coordinates associated with past radar anomalies, their request was denied. No explanation, no appeal. They were told simply, that area is restricted. Restricted to whom, and why? Similar cases abound. In 2016, a drone survey planned near the Thiel Mountains was abruptly cancelled after data-sharing conflicts with treaty overseers. In 2020, an international team attempting to deploy deep ice seismic sensors reported sudden withdrawal of logistical support. And in 2022, an academic program seeking to investigate magnetic anomalies in Queen Maud Land had its funding rescinded after diplomatic pressure. Always the same message: don't go there. But again, why? Is it simply politics? A show of unity? Or is it something older, deeper? Knowledge kept in cold storage? Some suggest that Antarctica is treated less like a wilderness and more like a vault. That its isolation is intentional. That somewhere beneath the layers of science and stewardship lies a secret worth guarding. And if that sounds far-fetched, consider this. In 1947, Operation High Jump, the largest Antarctic expedition in history, was launched by the United States Navy. Officially, it was a training mission, but it involved over 4,700 men, 13 ships, and multiple aircraft, and it ended abruptly. Some reports claim aircraft were lost, others describe encounters with hostile forces. Then, silence. Shortly thereafter, military interest in Antarctica dropped from public view, and within a decade the treaty was signed. Suddenly the continent was no longer a frontier. It was sealed. Public interest was redirected. Antarctica became a place for penguins, ice cores, and climate studies. The deeper questions were forgotten. Yet even now, the restrictions persist. The US government maintains multiple facilities on the continent, including the massive Amundsen Scott South Pole Station. On the surface, it's a research hub, but independent journalists who visited report unusually tight security. Certain buildings are off limits, movements are tracked, conversations are monitored, and then there are the no-fly zones. One such zone lies near the Gamburtsev Mountains, an under-ice range the size of the Alps, completely buried beneath glacial ice. Radar surveys show vast plateaus and anomalous reflections, some hinting at liquid water, others at structural geometry. Yet aerial access is restricted. Another lies near the South Magnetic Pole, where fluctuations in Earth's field suggest hidden anomalies, deep magnetic distortions, pulsing like buried engines. What are these places? Why can't we go? Why is this continent so harsh and uninhabitable, guarded so closely by so many? Some say it's a precaution. Others whisper of ancient structures, lost civilizations, hidden technologies. Some speak of deep vaults, chambers preserved under the ice, sealed since the last global cataclysm. Still others suspect that the truth isn't what lies beneath, but what has been found and hidden away. And perhaps that's why independent exploration is quietly discouraged. Because the next discovery might not be just a fossil or a microbe, it might be a revelation or a mistake. And so Antarctica remains frozen, not just in climate but in time, locked by treaties, blurred by satellites, protected by law. But what if someone finds a way through? What if, even now, there are private ventures, secret ones, working beyond the edge of the public narrative? What if the next chapter in Antarctica's story is already unfolding, not in science journals, but in silence? We turn now to the stories of those who went too far and never came back. The cold does not forget. It preserves, holds, seals away. And in Antarctica, where time hardens like ice, it also erases. For every official expedition that returns with soil samples and climate data, there are others whose stories vanish into the white, journeys begun with optimism, curiosity, or ambition, only to end in silence. No record, no broadcast, just absence. Some are accidents. That's the official explanation. The continent is harsh, after all. Weather can shift in minutes, ice cracks, winds rise, machines fail. But sometimes the disappearances don't make sense. Sometimes the people who vanish are the most experienced. Sometimes the rescue efforts are quiet, too quiet. And sometimes the places they vanish from are the very places no one is supposed to go. These are the forbidden zones. Let us begin with the most well-documented ghost, the Gamburtsev Mountains, a full mountain range, the size of the European Alps, yet completely hidden beneath 4,000 meters of ice. First discovered in 1958 through seismic measurements, the range defies explanation. It shouldn't exist. Mountain ranges erode over time, and these peaks, if ancient, should have been worn to hills. But they're not. They're sharp, pristine. Some scientists believe the ice preserved them. Others suspect something else preserved them. In 2009, a joint international team launched a major effort to map the range using radar, magnetometers, and gravity sensors. The initial scans revealed anomalies, shifts in density, strange thermal readings, and symmetrical voids beneath the valleys. A second team was scheduled to begin ground-penetrating surveys in 2011. That mission was cancelled. Officially, weather concerns. But insiders have stated anonymously that the cancellation came after data inconsistencies and sensor interference. One technician described instruments that began picking up rhythmic pulses, not seismic, not magnetic, something else, something timed. Another source described 3 researchers who left their base camp on snowmobiles to investigate an exposed ridge. They never returned. No signal, no wreckage, no explanation. The event was never publicly acknowledged. Their names do not appear on the official expedition list. Another site of mystery lies near Lake Vostok, the massive subglacial lake discussed earlier. In 2001, a Russian team drilling through the ice reportedly intercepted a pocket of high-pressure gas. Their communications went dark for 48 hours. When contact resumed, the team claimed nothing had occurred, but satellite records showed no movement during that window, just stillness. Rumours circulated of a crew member who had to be evacuated due to sudden psychological breakdown. He spoke, according to whispers, of a light beneath the ice, of hearing a voice, not with ears, but in the mind. The Russian government denied all of it. They still do. Then there's the South Pole vortex. In 2016, a private contractor working logistics at the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station claimed to have witnessed a massive aurora-like phenomenon over the snowfields to the east. But there was no solar activity at the time, and the phenomenon, he said, didn't behave like light. It rotated, spiraled, and it was silent. 2 days later, the station reported a temporary power system malfunction. No further detail was given. A month later, a scientist was flown out under medical emergency. The official cause was altitude sickness, but a leaked radio call described the patient screaming about a signal from the deep. More recently, in 2020, a drone team attempting to map a crevasse field near the Queen Maud Land escarpment lost contact with their UAV after it descended into a narrow chasm. The feed cut out mid-transmission. When the drone was recovered days later, its footage had been scrubbed. The memory card showed only static. The company operating the drone filed no formal complaint. They were later awarded a new contract, quietly, to perform non-disclosure survey work in the same region. What lies in these crevasses? What silences the machines? These questions bring us back to the forbidden zones, areas on the continent where access is restricted, officially or unofficially. Among them, the Vultat Massif, an ice-covered range first explored by Nazi Germany in the late 1930s. The region remains difficult to reach and is the subject of persistent rumours regarding underground installations and entrance zones. Mount Erebus, one of the few active volcanoes in Antarctica and the only one with a persistent lava lake. The area is known for strange magnetic interference and the presence of unusually heat-resistant microbes, some of which cannot be identified. The Dome Sea Anomaly, near the Concordia Station, a zone where gravity measurements fluctuate beyond known variables. Satellite coverage in the area is patchy, and overflights are rare. None of these zones are marked as forbidden on official maps. Yet somehow, no one goes there. Or if they do not report what they find. Those who question this secrecy are often dismissed as conspiracy theorists. But in the absence of information, speculation flourishes. Some suggest these zones are home to ancient ruins, structures buried in ice, either natural or designed. Others believe they hide energy sources or exotic materials or biological artifacts too dangerous to reveal. Still others whisper of openings, vast tunnels bored through the ice, leading into chambers untouched for millennia. Some claim these tunnels connect to a vast underworld beneath the continent, a honeycomb of caverns, rivers, and possibly even air pockets, kept warm by geothermal heat and hidden from the surface. Is this too far-fetched? Consider this. NASA's Operation Icebridge has mapped hundreds of subglacial voids, caves, basins, and channels. Some of them are large enough to hold skyscrapers, some are warmer than the surrounding ice, some contain strange gas signatures. One 2018 scan revealed what appeared to be a dome-shaped cavity beneath the Thwaites Glacier, 30 kilometers wide, hundreds of meters tall, and it was growing. Officially, this is a result of melting. But what if it's something else? Something emerging? Time and again, the pattern repeats. Anomaly, investigation, silence. We must ask, are these zones being avoided for our safety, or because they are not empty? Perhaps the answer lies with those who disappeared. Those who left behind only brief transmissions, scrambled signals or incomplete data. Or perhaps it lies with those who were recovered, but changed. In 2003, a Chilean biologist returned from a 6-week expedition to the southern Transantarctic mountains. His team had ventured into an unmarked crevasse system. When they returned, 2 of the 5 refused to speak. The biologist himself, once outgoing, became reclusive. He left the program, moved to a remote village, and died 6 years later, never having published his findings. His notebooks, found after his death, contained drawings, not of glaciers or microbes, but of doorways, lights, symbols etched in ice. Are these just the ramblings of a mind pushed too far, or the truth, disguised as madness? Antarctica holds its dead close. It buries truth beneath a mile of silence, but every so often a sliver rises, a warning, a crack in the whiteness, and through that crack something watches. Next, we explore the oldest theory of all, that beneath Antarctica lies not just ice and stone, but an entire world, a hollow one. There is a silence beneath your feet, not the silence of stillness, but the silence of space, a hollow. For centuries, the hollow earth theory has lingered at the margins of science, too strange for textbooks, too persistent to vanish. Often dismissed as pseudoscience or folklore, the idea posits a world beneath the crust of our own, not magma and mantle, but caverns, air, oceans, light, perhaps even life. And at the heart of this idea is Antarctica, a continent at the bottom of the world, remote, cold, and sealed beneath ice. If one were to hide an entrance to a hidden world, where else would they place it? The hollow earth theory traces its roots to antiquity. Ancient myths across cultures tell of realms beneath the surface, Agartha, Shambhala, the underworld. Often, these are not hells, but places of knowledge, sanctuaries, cradles of something older than civilization. In the West, the idea gained modern shape in 1692, when astronomer Edmund Halley, the same Halley whose name now adorns the famous comet, proposed that Earth might consist of concentric shells, each with its own atmosphere, rotating at different speeds. He speculated that magnetic anomalies might be explained by interactions between these inner worlds. By the 19th century, the idea had grown more elaborate. In 1818, American war hero John Cleves Sims Jr. petitioned Congress to fund an expedition to find the entrance to the inner Earth. He believed it lay at the poles, immense openings through which air, light, and perhaps even ships could pass. His followers were serious and numerous. They believed the North and South poles hid vast apertures, leading into a hidden realm. Most dismissed them as eccentrics, but their maps, strange, hand-drawn, often beautiful, showed something unsettling. Antarctica not as a flat expanse of ice, but as a ring surrounding a dark circle, a void, an entry point, a passage. Centuries passed, and the theory was relegated to fiction. Jules Verne flirted with it in Journey to the Centre of the Earth. So did Edgar Allan Poe, whose novel The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym described a polar sea that became warm, then boiling, then white, before a great being appeared in silence. But fiction has a strange relationship with truth, and in Antarctica, fiction sometimes bleeds into fact. Because in recent decades, the hollow earth theory has gained strange allies. Not scientists, but sensors. Machines. Consider the polar anomalies. Satellites passing over the South Pole often lose signal. Compasses behave erratically. GPS data in certain areas, particularly near the Transantarctic Mountains and the Doma region, displays sudden jumps or impossible readings. In 2016, an ESA satellite tasked with gravitational mapping reported an unexplained dip in local density over a 50-kilometre region in East Antarctica. Beneath miles of ice, it found a void. Not a cave, not a glacial tunnel, but something vaster, a discontinuity. NASA's Operation Icebridge later confirmed a similar feature beneath Wilkes Land, a 300-mile-wide depression in the crust, deep enough to swallow Everest. Officially, it's the result of an asteroid impact 250 million years ago, but radar data suggests something more complex. Layers, voids, and reflections not consistent with a natural crater. Some theorists believe these anomalies point not to a fully hollow Earth, but to massive internal chambers, not empty, but habitable, heated by geothermal vents, perhaps even illuminated by bioluminescent ecosystems, or something stranger still. They imagine Agartha, a name that surfaces again and again in occult writings, as a hidden civilization beneath the surface. Not metaphorically, but literally. Agartha is said to be a realm of advanced beings, guardians of lost knowledge, the remnants of pre-Ice Age cultures, or even extraterrestrial exiles. It's a place described in Tibetan and Hindu texts, in the esoteric doctrines of the Theosophists, and in the secret notebooks of wartime explorers, and again, Antarctica stands as its threshold. The polar entrance theory suggests that near the geographic South Pole, or perhaps near the magnetic pole, which has shifted significantly over the past century, there exists an opening, not a cave, not tunnel, but a shaft. Vast enough to allow entry, hidden beneath snow, shielded by treaties and monitored at all times. Of course, no such entrance has ever been photographed, or so we're told, but curious images have surfaced. In 2012, a series of Google Earth users claimed to have discovered a hole near the South Pole. Circular, smooth, and symmetrical. It was quickly dismissed as a crevasse. Within weeks, the image was altered. The area blurred. Other photographs, leaked by military contractors or anonymous pilots, show circular depressions, steam vents, and what appear to be paved clearings near otherwise inaccessible zones. Some even suggest that the Nazi expedition to Antarctica in 1938-39, led by Alfred Richter, was in search of such an entrance. They named their claimed territory Neuschwabenland, established temporary bases, and took thousands of aerial photographs, most of which remain classified. And then there's Admiral Richard E. Byrd. In 1947, during Operation High Jump, Byrd led the largest US military expedition to Antarctica. His task was to establish a research base. But according to later interviews and mysterious reports, Byrd may have encountered something unexpected. One alleged quote, attributed to Byrd in a Chilean newspaper, claimed he warned of flying objects that could travel from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Other apocryphal documents suggest Byrd flew into a warm area surrounded by ice, where he saw a city of immense towers and was met by an inner world presence. These accounts have never been verified. Byrd's official logs remain vague, but the mystery persists. Are these just stories? Imaginings of the bored and the conspiratorial? Perhaps. But the hollow earth idea has never truly vanished. It persists in whispers, it surfaces in mythology, it lingers in the margins of maps, and it resonates with something deeply human, the sense that beneath what we see lies something more. Science has confirmed that massive caverns exist beneath the ice, that entire river systems flow beneath Antarctica's frozen shell, that temperatures rise in strange pockets, that gravitational fields warp in certain regions. These are not theories, they are facts. So if we admit there are vast chambers beneath the continent, some still unmeasured, what are we truly dismissing when we deny the hollow earth? It need not be hollow in the way Sims imagined, with lush jungles and central suns, but it may be empty enough for silence, large enough for secrets, ancient enough for memories. And if such a place exists, might something live there still? Next, we journey from the hidden depths to the ancient sky. Because some believe the mystery of Antarctica isn't just below us, but above. That it is not just the remnant of Earth's lost civilizations, but the landing ground of something from beyond the stars. If Earth has a doorway to the stars, it may not be found in the sky, but beneath the snow. For decades, Antarctica has occupied a curious position in the minds of UFO researchers and skywatchers. Not because it lies beneath a crowded flight corridor, nor because of any native mythology, but because again and again reports of strange lights, unexplained aerial phenomena, and underground signals converge here, in a place where few are watching and fewer are allowed to look. Let us begin with a pattern. Across the world, UFO sightings follow certain trends. They cluster near military bases, around nuclear sites, above oceans and deserts. And then there's Antarctica, remote, sparsely observed, yet responsible for some of the most curious anomalies on record. Not hundreds of sightings, just a few. But all of them unnerving. The earliest accounts date back to the mid-20th century. During Operation High Jump in 1947, several pilots reportedly saw metallic discs moving at high velocity near the ice shelf. These reports were never formally included in the mission debrief, but personnel letters, now declassified, make mention of objects in the sky, brighter than stars, and maneuvers impossible with known aircraft. Then there are the seismic anomalies. In 2004, a team from the British Antarctic Survey registered a deep, low-frequency vibration emanating from beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet. It repeated every 16 hours, with a pulse duration of 30 seconds. No known geological process matched the pattern. The team called it a subglacial resonance. Later studies suggested it could be caused by shifting water beneath the ice. But some researchers weren't convinced, because the pulses, according to one leaked memo, were triangulated to a specific location, Lake Vostok. Yes, again, Lake Vostok. It seems no matter which theory we follow, the trail returns to this massive subglacial lake, sealed off from the surface for at least 15 million years. What is it hiding? In 2012, after years of careful drilling, a Russian team finally breached the lake. The sample they retrieved, pressurized water from 2 miles below the surface, was expected to contain microbes, maybe ancient DNA. But instead, the data vanished. There was no immediate publication, no media release, just silence. Later, Russian scientists claimed the sample had been contaminated. Others said it was lost. But one defector, speaking anonymously in 2014, made a different claim entirely. He said they had found a structure, not a microbe, not a fossil, a structure, metallic, geometric, partially embedded in the lake bed and warm to the touch. This claim, of course, cannot be verified, but in the years that followed, access to the lake was sharply restricted. The US, China, and the EU all filed joint research proposals. All were denied. Since then, only a handful of deep-sounding experiments have been allowed, and their data inconclusive. Meanwhile, strange things continued to appear in the sky. In 2016, the Neumeier Station 3, operated by Germany, reported a series of aerial anomalies during a geomagnetic storm. Station cameras captured glowing orbs hovering silently over the horizon. The footage, originally released on the station's public feed, was removed within hours. Copies remain, grainy but unmistakable, spherical objects, pulsing with internal light, hovering over the snow, then vanishing upward at angles no aircraft can perform. Around the same time, personnel at the Amundsen Scott station allegedly reported strange humming beneath the ice and lights within the snow described as luminescence without heat. NASA dismissed the claims, calling them after effects of atmospheric activity, yet even seasoned scientists described the events as unlike anything previously encountered. Theories bloomed, and among them one gained traction: that Antarctica is not just hiding an ancient civilization, but hosting a non-human presence, a base. Let us be clear, there is no verified evidence of an alien installation beneath the ice, but the pattern is compelling. Unexplained energy pulses, electromagnetic interference, satellite anomalies, geometric structures in radar data, seismic signatures without tectonic cause, and a history of abrupt research terminations. It's not proof, but it is a suggestion, a shape in the white noise. Some believe the base, if it exists, may not be recent, that it is not a crash site nor a forward outpost, but something older, something long established. They point to the Wilkes Land crater, a massive depression in East Antarctica over 300 miles wide. Officially, it is the result of an ancient asteroid impact, but radar scans reveal unusual density shifts, central peaks consistent not with impact melt, but with buried architecture. Others look to the South Magnetic Anomaly, where the Earth's magnetic field is weakest. There, sensors have picked up radio frequencies that defy classification, non-terrestrial in pattern, pulsing like a signal. Skeptics say it's just noise, background interference, but interference from what? Then there's the matter of ultra-low frequency, ULF emissions, first recorded in 1998. These emissions, typically associated with submarines and tectonic events, have been detected in regions with no geological activity, and they match no known satellite transmission. In 2001, a ULF burst lasting 72 seconds was detected by an American research array. It originated from a point beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet. Its signal was narrowband, too structured to be natural, and it repeated 3 times before vanishing entirely. Some have proposed it was a beacon, but who or what was it calling? The most extreme theories suggest a buried spacecraft, massive, ancient, and dormant. That the ice, far from being an obstacle, is part of the containment. That the treaty itself, signed just as the Cold War was rising, was less about peace and more about secrecy. If that sounds absurd, consider this. Since the 1960s, multiple nations have constructed neutrino detectors beneath Antarctic ice. The IceCube Neutrino Observatory, the largest, is designed to detect subatomic particles from space. It watches the cosmos by looking through Earth itself. But what is less discussed is that IceCube also detects neutrinos from below. In 2018, the observatory reported a spike in high-energy neutrino activity, coming from the direction of the South Pole, but without cosmic origin. The signal did not match any known supernova, black hole, or stellar event. It came from beneath, and then it stopped. The data was published, peer-reviewed, but never explained. If something lies buried beneath Antarctica, something non-human, technological and active, it may explain the silence, the restrictions, the blurred satellite images. The strange behaviour of governments otherwise in competition, and perhaps this is not a secret waiting to be discovered, but a secret already found. What if the UFOs seen above Antarctica are not visitors, but residents? What if they've always been here? And what if their presence is not benign? As we move forward, the tone darkens, because there are whispers not just of discovery, but of contact, of incidents suppressed, encounters denied, and of the one mission, unnamed, unclaimed, and erased, that may have opened something that was never meant to be touched. There are secrets, and then there are silences, and in the rarest cases those silences are not accidental. They are curated, cleaned, removed, not forgotten, but made untraceable, erased like chalk beneath a wet cloth, leaving behind only the softest blur of what once was. This is the story of one such silence. It begins, like many anomalies in Antarctica, without an official name, no mission designation, no entry in the ledgers of scientific collaboration, no plaque on any station wall. Yet those who follow the trail, whispers from declassified memos, redacted reports, and the shaky testimonies of those who broke their vows, refer to it simply as the event. They say it happened in the austral summer of 2003 to 2004, when the sky was bright 24 hours a day, when most of the world was looking elsewhere. The official narrative for that season was routine: atmospheric studies, glaciological surveys, and the continued operation of IceCube's precursor systems. Multiple countries were conducting normal operations, including the US, Germany, and New Zealand. But according to a suppressed communication unearthed years later, a secondary team, drawn from both civilian and military sectors, was deployed from McMurdo Station under unusual secrecy. Their goal, to investigate a set of electromagnetic signatures emerging from beneath the South Pole. These signals, described as structured and modulated, had no known terrestrial source. More strangely, they moved. Initially thought to be a malfunction, it was soon determined the signals were real, emerging from under the ice in a circular pattern, roughly 50 kilometers in diameter. They pulsed at regular intervals, not seismic, not cosmic, and not natural. The team, if it existed, was small. 12 individuals drawn from multiple nations, all with high security clearance. Their equipment was custom: deep ground radar, portable neutrino detectors, thermal imaging drones. What happened next is pieced together from fragments, snippets of corrupted emails, half-sent transmissions, and the words of one man who claims to have seen it all. We'll call him the technician. He never gave his real name. In a recorded conversation with an anonymous journalist in 2016, the technician described a descent, not into a crevasse, but into a cavern exposed by rapid melt beneath a previously stable glacier. A dome of ice, hundreds of meters wide, with walls that shimmered like glass under thermal light. And in the centre, he said, was a monolith. Not stone, not metal, something in between, smooth, geometric, covered in ridges and grooves that resembled language, or circuitry. He claimed it emitted sound, though no one heard it with their ears. It was felt, like pressure in the chest, a hum in the bones. Then the equipment failed. Not just one piece, but all of it. Radios, sensors, GPS, all dead in seconds. One team member collapsed, another screamed. The others stood, transfixed. And then, light. Not from the monolith, from above. The technician described it not as a beam, but as a sphere, diffuse, soft, and colourless. It passed through the ice without melting it. It hovered, observed, then it vanished. The team left in silence. No samples, no recordings, only what they remembered and what they were told to forget. When they returned to McMurdo, they were separated, interrogated, and placed under medical quarantine. 3 of them were never seen again. The official explanation: a glacier collapse had destroyed the site. No further investigation was conducted. But the technician was never satisfied. He claims to have found a backup copy of one thermal drone's memory drive. The image it captured, just before failure, shows a dome, yes, but more than that. A shadow on the surface of the monolith, not cast by light, but embedded within. A symbol. He sketched it shakily during his interview. It resembles no known language, but to those familiar with ancient symbology, it carries echoes, cuneiform curves, Mayan spirals, and Egyptian symmetry. An impossible blend, a glyph meant to be seen, but not read. After the interview, the technician vanished. His files were erased. The journalist who recorded him was found dead. An overdose, they said. The recording remains, circulated online, always taken down, always uploaded again. And now the question lingers. Was there contact? Not the kind spoken of in science fiction. No sources, no beings of light. But a message, a response, or perhaps a reminder. Some believe the monolith was a machine, a relic of a lost civilization, left behind to mark, to warn, or to wait. Others believe it was an antenna still active, that the pulse detected in the months before the mission was not an invitation, but a signal sent outward. To whom, we do not know. A few suggest something darker, that the event was not a discovery, but an activation, that something beneath Antarctica, something not made by us, is no longer dormant. We must ask, why has there been no follow-up, no international investigation? Because the silence is louder than denial, and it suggests coordination, that the world's powers, though divided on nearly everything else, are aligned in this. Whatever happened during that unnamed mission must not be repeated, and so the continent remains sealed, not to keep people out, but to keep something in. Next, we go deeper, to the theory that what lies beneath Antarctica is not of this world, or this age, that it predates the ice, that it predates man, and that once, long ago, it walked in the sun. Before us, there was something else. That is the unspoken thread that runs beneath so many myths, that humanity is not the first intelligent species to walk the earth, but merely the most recent, and in Antarctica, beneath its ancient grinding glaciers, that possibility takes shape, a form in the ice, a shadow in the geological record, a presence that does not match our story. This is the realm of the pre-adamic theory, a hypothesis that challenges not only the history of civilization, but the very definition of what it means to be human. Let us begin at the edge of the known. Mainstream archaeology tells us that anatomically modern humans emerged around 300,000 years ago in Africa. Civilization, however, writing, cities, agriculture, did not appear until roughly 6,000 years ago. What came before, we're told, were hunter-gatherers, nomadic bands, small, scattered. But the gaps are wide, and the silences are telling. Around the world there are stone structures that defy chronology, cyclopean walls, subterranean tunnels, and vast megaliths aligned with the stars. From Göbekli Tepe in Turkey to the Baalbek terraces in Lebanon, we find hints of cultures with knowledge far in excess of their supposed time. Some scholars have begun to suggest that civilization did not begin, but restart, after a cataclysm, a flood, an extinction event, and that before us there was something else, something intelligent, something capable, something that built. And if such a civilization once existed, before the end of the last ice age, then the question becomes, where are its ruins? Which brings us inevitably to Antarctica. 12 million years ago, Antarctica was a green continent. It had forests, rivers, and a temperate climate. This is not theory. It is confirmed by fossil pollen, petrified wood, and preserved soil samples drilled beneath the ice. The continent remained at the South Pole, but due to different atmospheric conditions and ocean currents, it was warm and habitable for millions of years. Then, 2.6 million years ago, the Earth entered a new glacial epoch. Ice began to accumulate, slowly at first, then in massive sheets. By 1 million years ago, Antarctica was locked in snow. If an advanced civilization had lived there before the freeze, it would now be entombed, preserved under miles of ice, hidden from erosion, from discovery, from time. This is the foundation of the pre-Adamic Antarctic hypothesis. But there's more. In 1513, Turkish Admiral Piri Reis drew a map that would later become the subject of intense debate. Among its depictions, clearly drawn with reference to earlier now-lost sources, is a landmass resembling Antarctica without ice. The coastline shown aligns with seismic scans made in the 20th century, revealing what the continent would look like unfrozen. Mainstream historians dismiss this as coincidence, but the map is real. And so are the scans. Then there are the legends, preserved in the myths of cultures oceans apart. The Hopi speak of the Third World, a realm destroyed by water, fire and ice, where sky people once walked. The Sumerians told of the Anunnaki, beings who descended from above to create and rule mankind, then vanished, promising to return. In the Book of Enoch, excluded from most modern Bibles, we find reference to the Watchers, a class of beings who came down to earth, taught forbidden knowledge, and were bound beneath the ends of the earth until a future judgment. Ancient texts, but they speak of imprisonment, of return, of the southernmost point. Could these be fragments of a real history? A story remembered only in myth? And what of the structures beneath Antarctica? In 2018, leaked radar images from a Scandinavian research team showed a hexagonal formation buried beneath Queen Maud Land. Not a coincidence of geology, but 6 massive walls, equal in length, intersecting at precise 120-degree angles. Naturally occurring hexagonal basalt columns exist, but not on this scale, not buried beneath 2.3 kilometers of ice, not perfectly aligned to celestial south. Other expeditions, silent, unofficial, have reported rectangular depressions, spiral mounds, and magnetic anomalies that seem to correlate with geometric layouts. But always, the access is denied. The data disappears. The researchers go quiet. The few who speak do so in whispers. One such individual, a glaciologist who requested anonymity, claimed to have seen a stone corridor protruding from a melting face of ice in the Shackleton Range, carved with markings, glyphs, a language not matching any known script. She took photos. When she returned to her station, her camera was gone. She left the program 6 months later, moved inland, disconnected from the world. Was she deceived? Or did she glimpse something that was never meant to thaw? The pre-adamic theory does not claim aliens, gods, or fantasy. It simply asks us to expand the timeline, to imagine that intelligence did not begin with us, that consciousness has emerged more than once, and that perhaps, in the deep memory of the Earth, we are not pioneers, but inheritors. If this is true, then Antarctica is not a frontier. It is a library, a crypt of stone and ice, and what sleeps beneath may not be dead, only dormant. Because as the ice melts, faster now, year by year, these ruins may surface, these glyphs may rise, and whatever message they carry, we may not be ready. There are those who believe these architects were not human, that their minds were different, older, not bound to flesh, but to structure itself, that they did not build cities, they were the cities, that what lies beneath the ice is not a ruin, but a being frozen in time. In the final chapters, we will confront the most haunting theory, that Antarctica is not just a hiding place, it is a prison, and something is waking. Imagine a lock, not one of metal and tumblers, but of stone, pressure, and time. A lock built not to guard treasure, but to contain a threat. A seal so vast it spans a continent, so enduring that it took the turning of entire epochs to wear it down. And now, as the air warms and the oceans rise, that lock is melting. This is the most chilling possibility of all, that Antarctica is not merely a frozen frontier, it is a prison. Let us begin not with speculation, but geology. There is evidence, buried in ice cores and ancient sediments, that Earth has suffered multiple extinction events far older than the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs. These were not merely slow shifts in climate or volcanic winters, they were sudden, massive disruptions, planet-wide. Some were caused by impacts, others by volcanic traps, but some remain unexplained. Around 534 million years ago, during the so-called Cambrian explosion, complex life appeared with baffling speed. Before this, the fossil record was sparse. Then suddenly trilobites, mollusks, arthropods, even precursors to vertebrates emerged, fully formed. It was as if something had pressed resume, and then, 500 million years later, a continent-sized sheet of ice buried the southernmost reaches of the Earth. Not as punishment, but as quarantine. If one listens to the myths, stripped of poetry, translated from metaphor, a disturbing theme emerges. Ancient texts across the world speak of beings cast down, bound beneath mountains, sealed beneath the world, or chained in cold darkness. In Sumerian lore, the Anunnaki who rebelled were buried in the great deep. In Greek myth, the Titans were imprisoned in Tartarus, beneath the earth, and as far below Hades as earth is from heaven. In the apocryphal Book of Enoch, the Watchers, celestial beings who defied divine law, were bound beneath the Dudael Desert in sharp stones and bitter frost. In the Norse tradition, ancient forces of chaos are locked away in Niflheim, a realm of mist, ice, and silence. And in almost every tale, the seal is not eternal. It ends. So we ask, what was locked away? Not demons, not monsters, not in the way folklore imagines, but something other. Perhaps once flesh, now fossil, once conscious, now cold, not destroyed, only kept distant, dreaming. Because even in myth, destruction is too final. Prisons are built for things that cannot be killed. This theory gains unsettling weight when we consider the structure beneath Wilkes Land, over 300 miles across, buried under 2 miles of ice. Seismic readings suggest an impact crater, yes, but also irregularities, layers of alternating density, a central void, and temperature gradients inconsistent with geology alone. Some researchers, off the record, refer to it as the vault. Others call it the shell. What if it is both? What if the impact wasn't something falling in, but something sealed down? In 2017, a multinational research effort in East Antarctica was abruptly halted after their ice radar began returning non-natural returns. The official statement cited equipment failure, but a member of the logistics team, later dismissed, claimed the returns showed curved architecture, symmetrical buttresses, and a signal echo consistent with hollow volume. He was told to erase the data. He didn't. Those files were leaked briefly online. The images are grainy, ambiguous, but they show something no glacier should produce, a concentric chamber with 6 radial corridors, geometric, measured, hidden. Was this the surface of something sleeping? Then there's the question of the signal. In 2006, researchers at Vostok Station detected a burst of low-frequency electromagnetic activity from beneath the lake. It was not seismic, not solar, not random. It repeated over a span of 6 days. 6 distinct tones, spaced with precise intervals, a pattern. When analysed, the waveform bore similarity to a class of radio frequencies used in deep space communication arrays. But it didn't come from space. It came from the Earth, from Antarctica. The data was filed away, the anomaly unexplained. In the years since, smaller pulses have been detected, always centred on ancient subglacial anomalies, always dismissed. But if these are not errors, if these are calls, then someone or something is either trying to be heard or trying to escape. We must also ask, why now? Why, after thousands of years of silence, do the signals begin? Perhaps it is the thinning ice, the rising temperatures, the drilling. Perhaps, in our hunger to discover, we have broken a seal we did not know existed. Some believe the monolith described in the unnamed mission, smooth, humming, alien, was not a device or a ruin. It was a key, or a lock, and that something recognized its failure. The final layer of this theory is the most disturbing. That Antarctica was not sealed by Earth's natural processes, nor by the hand of man, but by something else, something that came before, something that recognized the danger and chose to imprison it, rather than destroy it. Because destruction risks awakening. Only ice, only silence, only geological exile could hold it, and now all of that is melting. It could be myth, a story told in fear, but then myths are always born from memory, and the ground remembers. As we close this story, we must confront the final question, not what lies beneath, but what happens when it no longer sleeps. Because in the coldest part of the world, the temperature is rising, and the ice is listening. It begins with a crack, thin, barely audible, not a roar, not a collapse, just the smallest fracture, a change in pressure, a sound that disappears before it can echo. But in Antarctica, even a whisper carries. The ice has held for millions of years. It has sealed mountains, buried rivers, and hidden continents. It has erased timelines and preserved relics. But it is not infinite, and now it is changing. The end of this story does not come with a scream. It comes with a thaw. In the last 20 years, Antarctica's ice has begun to move, not slowly as glaciers do, but unpredictably. Ice shelves the size of cities break apart overnight. Ancient lakes drain in hours. Rivers of meltwater tunnel deep beneath the crust, carving paths where there were none. This is no longer theory. It is the language of climate. But beneath that language lies another, because as the ice melts, it reveals. And some of what it reveals does not belong. In 2022, a private satellite firm specializing in geological imaging released an innocuous report about unusual heat signatures beneath the Ross Ice Shelf. The data was public until it wasn't. Within 48 hours, the servers were offline. The employees refused interviews. The page now reads, Error 404. A whistleblower later described the heat pattern as concentric rings of thermal output, suggesting not geothermal activity but a reactor, buried, cold for centuries, now warming. Elsewhere, expeditions have returned with more questions than answers. In Queen Maud Land, a team drilling for ice cores encountered a stratum of black material, dense, metallic, and etched with patterns not seen in any sedimentary process. When brought to the surface, it fractured into hexagonal shards. Analysis suggested properties inconsistent with any known alloy. No one speaks of it now. At Dome C, a magnetic pulse disrupted an entire season's worth of GPS readings. The area has since been reclassified. No further studies have been permitted. These are not stories from the fringe. These are official expeditions. Real scientists, real data. And yet the pattern is clear. Discovery, denial, disappearance. One glaciologist, retired and unafraid, said it plainly. Something is shifting under the ice. We can feel it. Instruments don't lie. So what happens when the ice breaks? When the last frozen lock gives way? What happens if what lies beneath is not passive? This is not about aliens, not about hollow earths or ancient gods. It's about the unknown. The kind of unknown that governments hide not because it's sensational, but because it's inconvenient. Because it defies the story we've told ourselves, that Earth is ours, that history began with us, that there is nothing deeper than science can explain. But Antarctica whispers otherwise. It whispers of forgotten civilizations, of silent prisons, of signals not meant for us. It whispers of things older than bones, carved not in rock but in the architecture of the planet itself. And above all, it whispers that time is running out. Because the past is rising, the ice is retreating, and what was buried is stirring. Whether it be a machine, a mind, or something stranger still, the question remains. What did they seal away, and why does it still beat? Perhaps it is watching us now, waiting, or perhaps it no longer sleeps. In the words of one anonymous transmission intercepted by a weather station in 2023, source unknown, code uncracked, voice distorted, we did not bury it to forget, we buried it so it would not remember. The transmission repeated once, then silence, the kind of silence that feels like breath. So as you lie in bed tonight, far from the southern cold, remember this. There is a continent where time stops, where the sky circles endlessly, where the sun never sets and the night never rises. And beneath that stillness something waits. The ice is listening. Are you?